She had every luxury money could buy: private jets, designer clothes, a last name that opened every door. But when the world gave up on her, the only person who believed in her was a janitor nobody noticed. What happened next shocked an entire city. Amelia Kingsley had been born into a world that others could only dream of. For her, life came gilded with silver spoons, champagne breakfasts, and doors that opened before she even touched the handle. She was the daughter of Victor Kingsley, a man whose empire in finance was spoken of like an elemental force. His name made markets move. His signature could build or collapse companies overnight. When journalists wrote about him, they did so in reverent tones, as if describing a king from some long-forgotten age. And so, by extension, Amelia grew up as royalty. Her birthday parties were stage productions, where musicians performed live, and entire restaurants shut down for her entertainment. She wore clothes flown in from Milan, rode in cars that were one-of-one models, and never once in her life had to worry about a meal or a bill. To the world around her, she was enviable. To Amelia, she was invisible, even to herself. By the time she turned 17, she was enrolled at Harrington Academy, one of the most elite private schools in New York City. Harrington's hallways were marbled with history. Every corner carried the faces of alumni who now ran companies, governed states, or adorned magazine covers. Yet Amelia had not entered by merit. She had not sat through grueling entrance exams or nerve-wracking interviews. Her last name had paved the way like a golden bulldozer. Where others struggled for recognition, Amelia was simply ushered in. Her classmates knew it. They whispered it behind her back, sometimes right to her face. Her reputation was cemented as the girl with the expensive sneakers, the flawless hair, and the grades that were an open joke. She failed exams with casual indifference, rolled her eyes at assignments, and often skipped class entirely. Teachers who might have tried to discipline her held back, aware of the donations the Kingsley family funneled into the academy. They graded her with leniency, avoided confrontation, and tolerated arrogance because losing her would mean losing her father's favor. Amelia leaned into the role. She smirked during lectures, mocked classmates under her breath, and flaunted her privilege like a badge. When the school counselor once tried to pull her aside about her crumbling academic performance, Amelia had leaned back, arms crossed, and said coldly, "My father could buy this school. What difference does an essay make?" The words spread like wildfire through Harrington's polished corridors. At home, her life wasn't much warmer. Victor Kingsley wasn't a father in the traditional sense. He was a CEO first, a strategist second, and a man of family, if ever last. To him, success was measured in numbers and reputation. He rarely offered comfort and never offered excuses. In his glass-walled penthouse office at home, he treated Amelia less like a daughter and more like an underperforming investment. One evening, as the city lights of Manhattan glittered through the skyscraper windows, Victor confronted her after another round of phone calls from school. He placed the report on the marble countertop with a snap. "You're an embarrassment," he said evenly, his voice sharp as a scalpel. "If you worked for me, you'd already be fired." Amelia didn't even flinch. She crossed her arms, shifting her weight like a performer used to criticism. "But I'm not your employee. I'm your daughter," she muttered. Victor's jaw tightened. He took a slow breath and then leaned forward, eyes like ice. "The world doesn't care about your bloodline. Either you become someone, or you'll remain a spoiled child with a nameplate and no backbone, and I won't carry you." "Hanom." The silence that followed was heavier than any raised voice. Amelia's mask of indifference cracked for a moment, though she didn't let him see. She turned away, but the words settled like stones in her chest. The very next morning, she showed up at school pretending nothing had changed. Her driver dropped her off at the gates in a sleek black town car, and she strode across the courtyard in designer trainers, chin raised, aura untouchable. Some students watched in envy, others in disdain, but her arrogance still had its audience. Yet beneath the glossy facade, things began to shift. Tests piled up, failures multiplied, red ink stained every paper she touched. Harrington's faculty, weary of years of her indifference, could no longer justify passing her. Rumors began that the Kingsley donation might not be enough to cover her complete collapse. Then came the blow that cracked her world open. Victor cut off her credit cards. He took the car, the chauffeur, Edie, the little luxuries she had treated like oxygen. She was ordered to commute to school like everyone else by subway. It was punishment, but more than that, it was a brutal stripping of privilege. The subway was a revelation. The screech of the trains, the thick smell of damp concrete, the indifferent crowds rushing past her. All of it felt like another planet. No one cared that she was Amelia Kingsley. No one stared at her sneakers. No one glanced at her expensive coat. She was just another face in the blur. On one of those bitter mornings, still angry and humiliated, Amelia walked into the nearly empty gymnasium and noticed someone she had never really seen before. A woman, middle-aged, with strong arms and deep brown skin, was bent over a mop bucket, humming faintly as she worked. Her uniform was plain, her posture sturdy, her movements steady and sure. To Amelia, janitors had always been background noise, unnoticed, unimportant, part of the scenery. But that morning she heard the woman murmur something under her breath as she scrubbed. "Knowledge begins where pretense ends." Amelia stopped. "What did you just say?" The woman looked up, unafraid, her gaze calm and sharp. "Nothing you're ready to understand, child." Amelia scoffed, tossed her hair, and walked away. But the words clung to her all day like shadows. Knowledge begins where pretense ends. Her decline only accelerated. Her literature exam returned with a flat red mark. 18,100. Did you even read the passage? Math followed with 19. Biology an absolute 0. The counselor called her in once again, this time without the sugarcoating. "Amelia, you're at the bottom of the senior class. Statistically, you're failing your entire future." Amelia shrugged, muttering, "I'll hire another tutor." "You already had 4. They all quit." The statement stung. She walked out of the office, cheeks burning, and slipped out through a side exit to avoid the crowded halls. That was when she saw her again, the janitor wiping down a soda spill near the cafeteria. This time the woman looked up first and gave Amelia a polite smile. "You said something last time." "About knowledge and pretense," Amelia said cautiously. "And you remembered?" the woman asked, her tone curious. "Yeah, it stuck with me. Kind of weird for a janitor to be quoting philosophy." The woman chuckled softly and stood. "What's weirder is when a girl with the whole world at her feet can't pass a reading test." Amelia winced. It was brutal. And true. "You used to be a teacher, didn't you?" she asked quietly. The woman's eyes softened, though her tone remained steady. "Not just a teacher, a professor, literature, ethics, before life decided to knock me sideways." For the first time, Amelia felt her armor crack. "Teach me," she whispered. "Please." The woman studied her with steady eyes, then nodded slowly. "One condition, you leave your pride at the door. Here you are not Kingsley. You are no one. You start from 0, from the floor." Amelia hesitated, but desperation outweighed arrogance. "Fine," she said. "I'll do it. I can't keep failing." The woman offered her hand. "My name is Laverne Price. 6 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." The next morning, Amelia dragged herself out of bed before dawn. The city was still wrapped in fog when she descended into the subway, clutching a plain notebook. Harrington Academy was silent when she arrived, its marble corridors empty, the grand staircases echoing with nothing but her own footsteps. She made her way to the east wing, where Laverne was polishing the floor in steady, precise circles, earbuds in, humming faintly to herself. Amelia cleared her throat, her voice awkward. "Hey, you said you'd teach me, remember?" Laverne paused, removed an earbud, and gave her a long, measured look. "I remember, but I also said it won't be easy." "I don't care, I need this." Laverne placed her rag aside and folded her arms. "Then let's begin." And in that moment, Amelia Kingsley, the girl who had lived her entire life on marble floors and golden staircases, stood ready to start learning from the ground up, literally. The next morning began a rhythm that was unlike anything Amelia had ever known. She had grown up with carefully scheduled ballet lessons, etiquette classes, and piano tutors who bowed at her father's checks. But this was different. This was not staged, not polished. This was raw and unglamorous. 6 a.m. in the cold corridors of Harrington Academy, with the faint smell of bleach and wax clinging to the air, Amelia met with Laverne Price, mop in hand, notebook at the ready. Laverne was not the kind of teacher Amelia expected. She didn't hand out study guides or print worksheets. She didn't drone through lectures or assign repetitive drills. Instead, she asked questions. Always questions. What makes this sentence alive? Why does this character choose silence instead of speech? What do you think courage sounds like if you had to put it into words? At first, Amelia fumbled, stammered, grew frustrated. She was used to memorization, to cramming definitions and spilling them back like water from an overfilled glass. But Laverne demanded something else. She demanded thought, reflection, honesty. For the first time in her life, Amelia was being asked not to perform, but to engage. Evenings were no escape. After classes ended and the school emptied, she sat alone in the cafeteria, filling her notebook. Laverne had set a rule: 1 hour of writing every evening. No excuses. Write about what you learned, what you felt, what you didn't understand. No grades, no judgment, just honesty. Amelia's first pages were shallow, filled with complaints and surface-level summaries, but Laverne would return them with sharp comments scribbled in the margins. This is observation, not reflection. Try again. You're describing, not feeling. Go deeper. At first it stung. Amelia hated failing, but slowly she began to see the point. Soon her entries turned from half-hearted summaries to raw confessions. She wrote about her father and his expectations, about the way she felt suffocated by her last name, about the shame of failing in public. She wrote about her envy of classmates who seemed to find purpose effortlessly, about her fear of being empty forever. And she handed these pages to Laverne, who read them carefully, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes with fire in her voice, but always with honesty in her replies. Classes at Harrington began to shift too. Teachers noticed Amelia sitting upright, taking notes, raising her hand, not often, but with questions that surprised them. Questions about context, about meaning, about history. In literature, she asked why certain voices were excluded from the syllabus. In history, she pointed out how the textbook glossed over centuries of pain in a single page. She wasn't trying to impress anymore. She was trying to understand. Her classmates noticed as well. Some mocked her openly. Princess Kingsley is playing philosopher now, they snickered. Josh, the star quarterback, laughed as she scribbled in her notebook one afternoon. What are you doing? Writing love letters to the janitor. His voice carried across the cafeteria, drawing laughter from his friends. Amelia's cheeks flushed with heat. The old her would have snapped back, thrown an insult sharper than theirs. But before she could react, Laverne appeared silently beside her, placed a hand on her shoulder, and whispered, "You don't measure depth with a shallow ruler." The words landed heavier than any insult could. Amelia closed her notebook and walked away without saying a word. For the first time, silence felt stronger than retaliation. But resistance wasn't only from her peers. It came from the system itself. Rumors began to spread that the Kingsley heiress was studying with the janitorial staff. Parents whispered, teachers frowned. One rainy afternoon, Laverne was summoned to the office. The assistant principal leaned on bureaucratic language. "We've received concerns. Students gathering after hours under non-certified supervision is unorthodox." "I'm teaching," Laverne said simply. "It isn't your role. It isn't in your job description." "Neither is saving a child's life," she replied, her voice steady. They didn't respond, but the warning was clear. Amelia learned about it the next morning. She was furious. "They told you to stop? That's insane. You're the only one actually helping me." "I know," Laverne answered calmly, "but systems don't attack what's broken. They attack what's working." "Then I'll go public," Amelia said hotly. "I'll tell my father. I'll make them listen." "Not yet." Laverne's tone was firm, cutting through Amelia's rage. "Your voice must be strong enough to stand on its own. Not your father's name, yours." The words stilled her. For once, Amelia didn't argue. She understood, and yet something was changing. Their quiet mornings grew into something larger. One day, Amelia brought along Sophia, a quiet girl from her biology class who was struggling with essays. The next week, another student slipped in, then two more. Soon, a handful of them were gathering in the abandoned library after hours, notebooks open, hearts raw. They read James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, Audre Lorde. They debated, they cried, they confessed things they'd never dared to before. It wasn't school, it was a revolution. A small one, silent, but a revolution nonetheless. For the first time, Amelia felt herself transforming. She wasn't reading to pass. She wasn't writing to impress. She was learning to see not just herself, but others. She noticed the quiet janitor who hummed as he polished the floors, the teacher who gave brilliant lectures but never got the recognition, the classmate who worked two jobs yet still showed up on time. She began to realize how many people were invisible in a world obsessed with surface. But it couldn't last forever. Change never goes unnoticed for long. The whispers grew louder. The administration grew suspicious. And Victor Kingsley, sharp-eyed as ever, began to notice his daughter's late nights, her quiet mornings, her strange determination. One evening, as Amelia slipped home with her notebook tucked under her arm, she found her father waiting in the penthouse kitchen. His expression was cool, his voice sharp. "Who's been helping you?" he asked without preamble. Amelia froze. "I've been studying." "With who?" "The last tutor quit months ago. Don't lie to me." She hesitated. Her instinct was to hide Laverne, to protect her. But something deeper, something braver rose in her. "Laverne, the janitor." Her father blinked, then gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "You're joking. She used to be a professor. She's brilliant. She taught me more than any of your expensive tutors. She's a janitor," he snapped, "and that's all that matters." "No," Amelia said firmly, her voice trembling but clear. "She sees me. You never did." Victor's face hardened. "If you keep going down this path, you will lose everything. Your car, your credit, your name. Don't test me, Amelia." For a moment her courage faltered, but then she heard Laverne's voice echoing inside her. "Your voice must stand on its own." She swallowed hard. "Maybe I need to lose everything," she whispered, "to find out who I really am." Her father stared at her as if she were a stranger. Then he turned away, his silence colder than any slap. Amelia retreated to her room, heart pounding. For the first time in her life, she had chosen truth over comfort, meaning over money. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was real. But in the shadows of her decision, storms were gathering. And soon the fragile revolution she and Laverne had built would be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. The announcement appeared quietly, just another sheet of paper pinned to the gleaming bulletin board outside Harrington Academy's main office. Most students walked by without a second glance, their minds already on college applications and graduation gowns. But for Amelia, the words blazed like a challenge written in fire. End-of-year speech contest. What does it mean to truly win in life? She stared at the flyer, heart pounding. For her classmates, it was just another competition, another line on a resume to impress Ivy League recruiters. But for Amelia, it felt like something else entirely. A chance, a weapon. A stage where she could finally speak her truth, not her father's truth, not Harrington's truth, not the polished version of her that had always been paraded in tabloids, but her own. The timing was cruel. Only a week earlier, Laverne had been dismissed, fired quietly, escorted out of the school as if she were a criminal rather than a savior. The official excuse was budget cuts, but everyone knew better. Whispers spread, too much influence, too many parents unhappy with the idea of their children taking lessons from someone in a janitor's uniform. To the administration, it was easier to silence her than to acknowledge the difference she was making. Amelia had searched for her that entire day. The bucket, the mop, the cardigan she always wore. Gone. The halls felt hollow without her. It was as if the walls themselves had lost their pulse. She sat in the cafeteria with her notebook open, hands trembling. Page after page bore Laverne's handwriting in red ink. This is surface. Push deeper. Don't write to impress me. Write to free yourself. Transformation is the only real learning. Amelia flipped through the notes, tears blurring her vision, then pressed her pen to a blank page. This is not for a grade, not for applause. This is for you. Night after night, she wrote. She rewrote. She tore pages out and started again. Words poured from her like blood, raw and unpolished, until she found the shape of something true. The evening of the contest arrived with electric tension. The auditorium brimmed with parents in tailored coats, students in their sharpest attire, faculty sitting stiffly in the front rows. In the back, college scouts and journalists watched, pens poised over clipboards. It was an arena of judgment. Behind the curtain, Amelia waited for her name to be called. She wore no designer dress, no expensive jewelry, just a plain navy blouse and dark jeans. For the first time in her life, she wanted to be invisible on the outside so her words could be visible on the inside. She clutched her notebook like a lifeline. Next speaker, Amelia Kingsley. The room hushed. She stepped out, the stage lights glaring hot against her face. She paused, scanning the sea of expectant eyes, and then began. My name is Amelia Kingsley. Some of you know me as the girl who wasted every opportunity, who failed every test, who carried a golden ticket and treated it like trash. They say I had everything, but I didn't have the one thing that mattered, someone who believed in me until she showed up. She took a breath. The silence was thick, unbroken. She wasn't my teacher, not officially. She wasn't paid to help me. She had no office, no authority, only a mop and a heart big enough to see through my anger. While the world judged me by my name, she taught me how to see, how to read between the lines in books and in life. She didn't just clean the floors of the school, she cleared the fog in my head. Amelia's voice trembled, then strengthened. But she was silenced, fired, because systems don't like it when someone from the bottom starts making a real difference. So today, I'm not speaking to impress you, I'm speaking to honor her. She lifted her notebook high. She told me once that learning is transformation, that real winning isn't about being rich or powerful, it's about becoming someone worth remembering. So what does it mean to win in life? It means waking up. It means letting go of your name. It means finding your truth and using it to lift others. She might not be here tonight, but she is in every word I speak. Her name is Laverne Price. There was a heartbeat of silence, then a clap, another, and then the room erupted. Applause thundered through the auditorium, a standing ovation. Parents wiped tears from their eyes. Faculty members clapped until their palms ached. For the first time, Amelia felt her voice, not her father's money, not her surname, echo across a room and matter. And then, in the back row, she saw her, a woman in a headscarf, quiet eyes glistening with tears. Laverne. She had slipped in silently, unnoticed, to watch. Their eyes met. For a moment, Amelia forgot the crowd, forgot the cameras, forgot her own fear. The sight of Laverne smiling through tears anchored her like nothing else could. The video of Amelia's speech spread within hours, first among students, then through alumni networks, then across social media. The headline blazed across blogs and news sites. Billionaire's daughter credits school janitor for saving her life. It went viral. More than any Kingsley Corporation deal, more than any investment or acquisition, Amelia's story traveled across the world, and it carried Laverne with it. Calls came in from local colleges asking her to speak, then from organizations, asking her to lead workshops. Before long, one college offered her a teaching position, not because of her resume, but because of the undeniable truth of what she represented. The courage to teach when no one was watching, the power to lift a life when no one expected it. Amelia passed her classes, not out of pity, but because she earned it. Teachers noted her change, engaged, insightful, transformed. She received offers from Ivy League universities, glittering pathways paved with prestige. But she turned them all down. Instead, she chose a small liberal arts college in the city, one focused on social justice and community. When reporters asked her why, she answered simply, "Because I want to learn the way she taught me, and I want to build a place where no one ever has to ask to be seen." That idea became a seed. It grew with every notebook she filled, every conversation she had with classmates who whispered, "Your speech changed me." It grew until it became impossible to ignore. One autumn afternoon, Amelia found herself standing on the front porch of a modest house in Brooklyn, clutching an envelope. Laverne opened the door, wearing a simple cardigan, surprise flashing across her face. "You didn't have to come all the way here," Laverne said. "I did." Amelia placed the envelope in her hands. Inside was her high school diploma, her college acceptance, and a handwritten proposal. "I want to start something," Amelia said softly. "A center. A place where people can learn like I did. With honesty, with depth, without shame. A place for voices that usually go unheard. I want to call it the Price Institute." Laverne's eyes filled with tears as she read. She looked up, voice trembling. "Why me?" "Because everything I am now started with you, but only if we do it together." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Laverne whispered, "Always." The seed had sprouted, and soon it would grow roots strong enough to change not just Amelia, but a city. The seed of an idea had been planted on that Brooklyn porch. Months later, it became reality. The sign above the repurposed community center read, "The House of Voices, not Kingsley, not Price. Just a promise voices matter here." The building was nothing like Harrington's marble halls. Its walls were patched with fresh paint, its floors scuffed with years of use. Old fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, but in the evenings they glowed warm, illuminating rows of battered desks and donated books. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was alive. Every week more people came. Some were students who had once been dismissed as failures. Others were adults who worked long hours, but still hungered for a place to learn. A janitor from a nearby school arrived one night, saying, "I wanted to see what all the talk was about." A nurse, exhausted from a night shift, came to join a writing circle. Children wandered in, clutching pencils in wide-eyed curiosity. No one was turned away. Laverne stood at the chalkboard like she had been born there, her voice sharp, her questions sharper. She taught Baldwin with the same reverence as Scripture, Morrison as if every line carried oxygen, Lord like a rallying cry. She pushed each student, just as she had once pushed Amelia. "Don't write to please me, write to free yourself." Amelia, meanwhile, ran the programs. She managed the schedules, arranged donations, connected with volunteers. But she also sat in the back of the room, notebook open, still learning. She had discovered that leadership wasn't about standing above others, but sitting beside them. She learned to balance budgets, to rally communities, to face critics who sneered, "Why waste time on this when you could be at Yale or Harvard?" She answered with steady resolve, "Because this is where I belong." It wasn't easy. Bills piled up. The roof leaked. A reporter once published a scathing article, "Billionaire's daughter plays savior in Brooklyn." Amelia cried the night she read it, until Laverne reminded her, they only attack what threatens them. Keep building. And they did. They built. Slowly, stubbornly, beautifully. One winter evening, a boy no older than 12 approached Laverne after class. He handed her a worn notebook, its pages full of crooked handwriting. "This place," he whispered, "made me feel smart for the first time." Laverne held the notebook to her chest, tears streaking her cheeks. Across the room, Amelia watched, and for the first time understood that true legacy wasn't in her father's empire. It was in moments like this. News of the House of Voices spread. Community leaders visited, awards followed, journalists returned, this time with kinder headlines. Amelia was invited to speak at conferences not as the billionaire's daughter, but as the co-founder of a movement. Laverne was honored by universities that once ignored her, now recognizing the brilliance they had cast aside. And then, one spring afternoon, Victor Kingsley came. He stood in the back of the crowded center, watching as his daughter addressed a circle of students. She spoke about courage, about failure, about the power of seeing others. For once, he did not interrupt. For once, he simply listened. Afterward, outside in the fading sunlight, father and daughter faced one another. The silence was heavy, but softer than it used to be. "I didn't expect to cry," Victor admitted finally. I didn't expect to forgive you, Amelia replied quietly. They embraced not as CEO and heir, but as two people trying to rebuild something fragile but real. Years passed. The House of Voices grew, its impact rippling through the city like a tide. On a national stage, Amelia accepted an award for innovation in education. She stood at the microphone scanning the crowd of policymakers, professors, and leaders. Her voice was steady, her words unshaken. They said I failed everything until I learned one truth, that greatness doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing others. And sometimes the teacher who changes your life isn't in a suit. She's in a work uniform, holding a mop, quoting philosophers when no one is listening. Her name is Laverne Price. She didn't just save my grades, she saved my soul. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered, cameras flashed, but Amelia barely noticed. She looked to the side of the stage where Laverne stood, her smile quiet, her eyes proud. Together they walked off, not toward fame or fortune, but toward a future filled with desks, notebooks, and voices waiting to be heard. Because the true victory was never in the applause. It was in the transformation, and the House of Voices was only just beginning. If stories like this inspire you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? More powerful stories are on the way.